Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we're going to be looking at how to build a counter deck. The lovely AJ Brass is one of the lovely people who is a supporter over on Patreon, patreon.com/PTCGRadio. I don't plug it too much, I just tend to kind of chuck it on the end of my videos. But if you ever want to support the channel, that's a good place to do so. Every week I record an extra bonus pod for supporters, which is just me answering questions, so do check that out if you're so inclined. But the highest tier on Patreon says that you get to say, "Wassy, make me a video." And the lovely AJ Brass is one of these people, and the lovely AJ Brass has said, "Wassy, how about how to make a competitive rogue deck?" And I've been thinking about this because I didn't know exactly how to go about making this video. And I thought, let's narrow it down a bit to counter decks. Because I've got some experience of being extremely successful with counter decks. Sorry, I know that sounds vain, but it's true, I apologize. And we just saw a counter deck do really well at the World Championships. So I thought it would be worth showing you guys how to go about doing so. The first thing to note about making a counter deck, you want a mature format. You want a format where we know what people are playing. So if we go to February 2014, we had a very mature format where, generally speaking, the vast majority of competitive players were playing either Verizon Genesect, Blastoise, with the main attackers being either Keldeo or Black Kyurem EX. They were playing plasma decks, things like Thundurus and Deoxys, and they were playing Darkrai. This was right before the release of the X and Y expansion, so we didn't yet have Yveltal EX. And that was basically it. The vast majority of good players were playing this. We had a mature format. X and Y was just about to be legal, but it wasn't legal yet. So I made a deck aiming to beat these four decks, and here's what I came up with. Against Verizon Genesect, it was very simple. I played the Flareon from Plasma Freeze. It attacks for a double colorless energy, meaning I didn't need any specific energy. 20 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. Silver Bangle was a thing at the time. So essentially, if I could get 4 Pokemon in the discard pile, not the most difficult thing ever, I could get a one-hit KO on Verizon or Genesect. It absolutely smashed them. So that was that deck taken care of. In terms of Blastoise, Black Kyurem was very handily taken down by the Zoroark from Black and White. Foul play for just a double colorless energy. You'll notice same attack cost. Choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. Black Kyurem did 200 damage, discarding free energy for a water lightning colorless. That's fine. The rule was you did 200 then discard free energy, so you put a double colorless on Zoroark, discard it, Black Kyurem goes down. As for Keldeo, we had Leafeon, also from Plasma Freeze. For one colorless energy, still, I'm not using any specific kind of energy, 20 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. And Blastoise put a lot of energy down. So this generally, for one colorless energy, would take down Keldeo, especially since you had Silver Bangle. Silver Bangle was choice banned, but you could only use it on a non-EX Pokemon. So I've got a whole bunch of non-EXs taking down all of these Pokemon. Now, in terms of Plasma here, we had a couple of Drifblim that did the job very nicely indeed. We had the one from Plasma Blast, whose ability said it cost one colorless energy less the attack for each of your opponent's team Plasma Pokemon in play, and then for free colorless energy, but against Plasma decks, essentially 0 energy, 70 damage plus discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon. And given that Plasma decks were basically playing Plasma Energy, which was a special, and they were playing Prism Energy, which was like a Rainbow Energy but for basic Pokemon where you didn't take the damage counter, which was a special energy, and Double Colorless, which was a special energy, the key to taking down Plasma was not big one-hit KOs with weakness, it was running them out of energy. So I'd use this Drifblim combined with Enhanced Hammer to make sure that I could basically get rid of their energy. But the good news is there was actually a second Drifblim at the time, which for a single colourless energy, you notice I still am not using any coloured energy here. 50 damage times the number of special energy cards in your opponent's discard pile. Time you build in Silver Bangle, which is obviously a super important card in this deck, you're doing 180 damage as soon as they've got free special energy in their discard pile. And now I have got super specific counters to these three top decks, and there's a theme running through here. Stage 1s, because anything above a stage 1 is too cumbersome. Single energy attachment, either one basic or a double colourless energy. Single prize Pokemon. And trying not to get too many evolution lines. So far, we've got 2 different Drifblim, but they all evolve from Drifloon, and 2 different evolutions of Eevee. At this stage, it's looking pretty gosh darn good. Now, Darkrai was the slightly awkward one. There wasn't an amazing counter to Darkrai. What I ended up doing was putting Stunfisk in the deck, 20 to the active, 20 to the bench for 1 fighting energy. I had the luxury of playing whatever energy I wanted at this point, because it was fine. I didn't need it for anything else. And then Zoroark was quite good because it could copy Darkrai's Night Spear. Leafeon was quite nice because they often put a lot of energy on the board using stuff like Dark Patch. And Flareon was quite good if you could get enough Pokemon in the discard pile. Flareon was a really good Hail Mary against any deck, just pile energy in the discard and smash. It was a viable strategy. So Darkrai wasn't quite the auto win the others were, but against your standard builds, my Verizon and Genesect matchup was literally like 90-10. It was almost unlosable. They could put Lugia in to make things more awkward, but it was still a very good matchup. My Plasma matchup was probably about 70-30. Again, Lugia could complicate matters. It was my least favourite card to play against back then. And my Blastoise matchup again was 70-30 or better. It beat the best decks in the format. Darkrai was probably about 60-40. I later found out after the tournament it was no good at that point. I should have played Sork. Which I think I'm the first person to ever say that. Sork was what you should do, ladies and gentlemen. Sork was the play. It was better than Stunfisk. Having said that, I ended up losing in top 8 to Tord Reklev. I attached a Silver Bangle to the wrong Pokemon because I was overly tired. I'd had about 2 hours sleep. Had I attached it to the right Pokemon, I'd have won top 8. Top 4 was Verizon and Genesect, and the final would have been a rematch against Tord's exact list, different Norwegian player. And I beat Tord in top 32. I should have won in top 8. I should have taken down the tournament. And it's not particularly because I was an amazing player or anything like that. I had built a deck that countered the top 4 decks. Now, the key is, and it's super important, the first 2 rounds. Because this was a deck that beat Verizon and Genesect, beat Blastoise, beat Plasma, beat Darkrai. But some people aren't playing those 4 decks. And against other decks, maybe I can rush them with Flareon. Maybe they attach lots of energy with Leafeon. The thing is, it's a very reactive deck. Zoroark is good if they've got an attack that can KO themselves. Leafeon's good if they attack lots of energy. Flareon's good if I can get Pokemon in the discard fast enough. Drifblim's good if they discard special energy. The other Drifblim's only good against SP. If you don't play the decks you want to play against, things go very wrong. And things did go very wrong at the UK National Championships in 2014, same year. The last year I actually played at Nationals before I started casting. And at that point, the format was, without exaggeration, about 70% Plasma and Darkrai. It was all Plasma and Darkrai. I apologise, it was 2013, right before the ECC. And it went terribly badly. I played Cobalion. Cobalion gave you a very good matchup against a lot of these decks. And I played Terrakion, which gave me a very good matchup against both Thundurus and against Darkrai. I also played Landorus. I forget the exact list. But I had a great matchup against Darkrai decks. I had a great matchup against Plasma decks. And in 7 rounds, I played 0 Darkrai, 0 Plasma. I played against a bunch of Blastoise that I just couldn't beat. And I ended up going like 3-4 or something. I had a bad day. And the reason is, I didn't play against metagame decks the first 2 rounds. When you play a counter deck, if you end up on the bottom tables, you have a really bad day playing against non-meta stuff that you can't beat. At the ECC in 2014, I played a lot of the right decks, and I should have won the whole thing. I ended up coming 5th. UK Nationals 2013, I played all the wrong decks. 70% of the metagame was Darkrai and Plasma, and I'm not exaggerating. And I played 0 Darkrai, 0 Plasma. Because here's the thing to remember about counter decks. They counter the main decks. If you play the main decks, you'll do very well. If you don't, you'll do very, very badly. I would wait for a mature format to use this. As soon as you end up in a format where the majority of people are playing the same kind of decks, it's very simple. Either look for things that these decks have in common, or play decks that can beat the ones you're up against. In 2014, I was able to build a deck that had really specific answers for the top decks. And between Landorus, Cobalion, Terrakion, etc., I built a deck that could beat Plasma and Darkrai. I just didn't play against them. And that's what was really dumb. Kai Coulston, a very good Scottish player down here in the UK, played a very similar deck to me, but just with Garbodor, and ended up getting top 16 at the same national championships. And admittedly, Garbodor did give him a slight answer to Blastoise, so it was still a bad matchup. He just played against those decks. Or maybe he had a better list and was a better player. I wouldn't rule that out. He's a lovely dude and a very good player. Just at the World Championships this year, and I'm not going to go profiling it in great detail, I made a video, I'll pop a link in the description, but a bunch of American players came around with Garbodor, Buzzwole, and Shrine of Punishment, and got through day 1 of Worlds. 2 of them went 6-0, another one went 5-1 after only losing a mirror match in round 6. Why? Because it was an incredibly GX heavy format. So Shrine of Punishment and non-GXs abused that. Zoroark was everywhere, you can beat that with Buzzwole. Buzzwole's everywhere, you can beat that with Garbodor. Classic counter deck. But then people adjusted and played other stuff, and by the time day 2 came around, those decks just didn't do very well. None of them in top 8. Playing rogue or counter decks is super risky. You've got to be really confident about what the metagame looks like, and then all you need to do is one of 2 things. Either you include specific cards to beat all the main decks, or you look at what all the main decks have in common, and you counter that. Usually, it's a combination of both. So you saw that at Worlds this year, the Australian players went, right, non-GXs and Shrine of Punishment, that will beat all these GX-heavy decks, but we need to play Buzzwole for Zoroark and Garbodor for Buzzwole. I do hope that has clued you guys in on how to make rogue or counter or more unusual Pokemon decks. It's much harder to do, and you will really be at the mercy of the matchups that you play. But when it works, ladies and gentlemen, oh, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I want to hear from you guys, though. If you've got any tips for building rogue or counter decks, pop them in the comment section. If you've got examples of counter decks that did well, pop them in the comment section. If you've got ideas for a counter deck that might be good in this upcoming format, you know the deal. Comment section. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. And do check out the Patreon. If you want bonus pods, I've got you covered. If you want to demand I make you videos, I've got you covered. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.